Hello and welcome to the program. It's been a while since we last aired any stories on our channel, and I can assure you it hasn't been by choice. I was given a term of imprisonment for 9 months relating to 4 counts of contempt of court. So I had to serve 274 days behind bars at Risdon Prison in Hobart. My daughter at the time was only 4 weeks old, and the things I have missed out on from seeing her growing up will be something I will never forgive myself. There is nothing worse than missing out on seeing the first smile your child gives you, or their first little giggles, or when it comes to them making the huge progression and finally starting to crawl. Those are the moments I've missed and I'll never get back. So tonight, I want to share with you my story. The story that surrounds the government, the powerheads that run the prison, and the prison politics that continue to plague this broken justice system, and give an inside perspective of what it's like sitting behind the walls and wires of Risdon Prison, not as a journalist, but as an inmate. It's home to many hardened criminals, and it's a place that you wouldn't wish your worst enemy to visit. But it's a place that is full of broken promises, fractures within rehabilitation, and for the inmates, it's a complete disgrace on the government's behalf. Risdon Prison is a facility full of failures after failures, and it's only getting worse. For the inmates, it's a place that is designed to break you down in so many ways. And for some of those inmates who have served time on the mainland, told me that Risdon is far worse than any other prison experience they've endured. Risdon is like a third world style prison, and the structure of the prison is crumbling. While I was there, an entire section of the prison was riddled with asbestos, and when it came to removing it, the process was done incorrectly and put the health of both inmates and officers at risk. The ground and lawn area within the confinements of the minimum prison known as Ron Barwick was completely contaminated. Inmates were using the grounds on a regular basis before government went ahead and placed temporary fencing around a section of the oval. It's simply negligent behaviour, like that by the government, that demonstrates a clear disregard for the health and safety of all inmates within the prison. But it's not only health and safety risks that operate on a daily basis within Risdon. The lack of support for the mental health of inmates is another issue that plagues our state's prison system. Inmates who wish to turn their life around through programs including education are simply being ignored. Staff that work within the education sector have told your story of how they constantly are fed up with how the government continue to close down programs and other key factors that would help benefit inmates for a better understanding of the social life on the outside once they are released. While I was in Risdon, it was hard to be a part of any education programs, and for some even harder to do courses that is mandatory by the State Parole Board. The government is faced with presenting a contradicting balance of justice. On one hand, you have the parole board made of members of ex-serving police officers who, mind you, have been terminated by their previous employer for misconduct, ex-correctional services staff, and all who have seen the only one side of inmates, which is the criminal side of their personality. This is a serious breach of justice. You cannot have ex-police officers who may have very well made an arrest on the very same person that is seeking approval for their parole. It's a simple open and shut case of conflict of interest. Then you have inmates in need of medical care who are being simply ignored. And for the health system in Risdon, it's nothing more than rubbish. You see, you have supposed doctors taking inmates off medication that their own GP on the outside prescribed to them, all because it's deemed as a prohibited item. Sadly, there was a case that was brought to my attention where an inmate who came into the prison with a brain tumour and was forced to work within the kitchen area, who was told by the prison doctor he couldn't have his medication because it was a prohibited drug. That man collapsed a week later and was taken to hospital in a serious condition. To this day, I'm not sure what happened to him, as he never returned back to the prison. But it shows you the issues surrounding the medical care within the prison and how deeply broken it is. The hurdles the prison's medical staff make you go through to get a simple request looked at can be anywhere from 3 weeks to 5 months, and even then there's no guarantee you'll be seen within that time. I waited 3 months before I was given my blood pressure medication. 3 months I had to wait for something that could have very well impacted my condition of my heart. That is not how medical staff and care should operate, not even in a prison. Another case that still to this day shocks me. An inmate that was in the division I was in, who was celled up across from my cell, contacted the emergency button on the lower level of the yard in the early hours of the morning. His pressing of the button and the conversation he was having woke me up, as the speaker to the emergency button was below my cell, so I could clearly hear what was being said. The man had explained he was suffering severe chest pain and had previously had a heart attack while serving time in Risdon. The inmate explained he needed to be seen by the prison doctor. It was at this time the correctional services officer told the man to go back up to his cell and wait for staff to attend. The staff did attend to the man in the end, but only after an hour of time had passed. The officers, who were accompanied by a nurse, simply gave him 2 tablets of paracetamol and told him if the pain got worse to buzz up again. The next day, the man was transported to hospital for further investigation of his heart. Delays and careless behaviour by both medical and correctional staff could have costed this man his life, and sadly, he would have just been another case, another dying person in prison. Regardless of inmates' circumstances, everyone deserves proper medical treatment when it's required, and being denied that treatment is nothing more than neglect. And with neglect comes serious consequences. But it seems there is no importance to the prison or the government, and that is concerning. But it's not only medical treatment that is a letdown within the prison. It's the treatment of inmates that presents a real concern. The treatment by the correctional officers I received was, of most of the time, fair and understanding, but there were times where their accountability would be pulled into question. You see, while I was serving the last part of my sentence, I was physically assaulted by a number of inmates, who I will leave as anonymous. But the incident played out in front of the cameras, which are supposedly monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on a 12-hour rotating roster. But for some reason, on this day, I was severely bashed. It took other inmates to run and get help, as it appears there were no correctional staff watching the cameras that day. The neglect by the prison staff is nothing more than sickening, and now I'm faced with living with a brain injury as a result of the bashing. I was told by prison staff who arrived at my cell that I was unresponsive, having a large number of seizures, and upon arrival to the hospital, I was required to be placed into an induced coma. I had suffered severe swelling on the brain and required emergency treatment at both the prison, while in transit, and at the hospital. A prison staff member, who will not be named, told me that I was not seen by prison staff until 21 minutes after the bashing took place. That's 21 minutes I did not get medical treatment. That's 21 minutes my brain was being exposed to seizures and trauma. That is 21 minutes my body laid there on the ground of a prison cell, not being given the medical aid it needed. Now I'm left with scarring on my brain, I have memory loss, my hands tremor all the time, and I'm on a bunch of different medications I will need to take for the rest of my life. I asked the question, how is this fair? Sadly, once I was discharged from the Royal Hobart Hospital, I was placed into the Hobart Remand Centre, as I was unable to go back to Ron Barwick. So I went from being classified as a minimum inmate to spending the last 2 months in a maximum prison where there were constant lockdowns. Throughout the entire prison network, which includes Hobart Reception Prison, Ron Barwick Minimum Prison, Launceston Remand Centre, and of course Risdon Maximum Security, all these prisons have one thing in common: constant lockdowns. Now, these lockdowns can be anywhere from a few days to a few weeks to a few months, and ask any inmate that is serving time, they will tell you that lockdowns are tough. A typical lockdown day at Hobart Reception Prison starts with, firstly, you don't leave your cell. There is no interaction with other inmates, no exercise or yard time, no weights, no phone calls to your family and friends. A general lockdown day at Ron Barwick is all inmates are confined to their divisional yard, so you can't go out to the gym, the library. Most of the time education is cancelled, which includes all courses. You can't go for a walk around the Oval or play any sports. It's a factor no inmate likes to go through. Any basic human right inmates have is thrown out, disregarded, and on the days the prison is placed into lockdown, it becomes worse. I can tell you, during my 9-month sentence, I kept a record of all the lockdown days I had experienced, which was a total of 103 days. That was a large amount of days that were scattered over the 9-month period I was in prison for. The main reason for the lockdowns were due to staff shortages. Whether that is the truth to the matter, I guess we will never know. But one thing is for sure, these lockdowns are happening more and more frequently, and it's proving a major flaw in the justice system. Something Correctional Services Minister Elise Archer is refusing to acknowledge. She wants to make the new Hobart Reception Prison active by next month, but that simply won't operate without the staff being there to run it. Staff shortages are on the rise, and it seems nobody wants to work for a government body that is simply hanging on by a thread. Employees need job security, and that is something Elise Archer's government simply cannot provide. When Michael Westbrook escaped from Ron Barwick, it was a pretty open and shut case. The inmate simply grabbed a wheelbarrow from another inmate on the Oval, wheeled it across the yard over to the main wall and exit door. And without any checks or approvals, the prison guard opened the door, and that's when the inmate made a run for it. The key factor here is that Correctional Services Minister Elise Archer, when asked by media how the escape occurred, she said the prison were investigating it. But she knew that one of the prison guards, her prison guards, had simply unlocked the door. It appears this Liberal government and the people who have been appointed to their positions are nothing more than puppets on a string who have no backbone or willingness to help inmates better their lives. It's all about the cash they can collect and how amazing their own portfolio looks. It's no wonder in the recent federal election, Labor won. Elise Archer and the other powerheads don't give a damn about anyone inside that prison, including their own staff members. So it makes you realise why so many people don't want to work in the correctional services. Because it's basically a shit job. You'll get no support and be pushed into working long hours, not be rewarded for it. Maybe Miss Archer needs to visit the prison and see the shambles of what she calls a perfectly honest and fine prison system. Or maybe she just needs to come clean and cut the bullshit excuses she rattles off to other parliamentary members and the public. And finally say she has no idea what she is doing and that she needs to step aside and allow someone to take her place. Someone who knows exactly what they need to do to fix up her constant mistakes. The other part I'd like to bring to your attention is the fact that the mainstream media keeps showing you pictures like this of the prison. Let me tell you, that picture is of Division 7 within the grounds of Ron Barwick. And yes, the yard looks all nice and freshly painted, and there is an expensive outdoor setting and the cells look nice and brand new. Well, simple fact is, that area is only for two kinds of inmates. One, the old and frail, and two, pedophiles. No mainstream inmate can enter that area. For the rest of the inmates, their living conditions are disgusting, and the basic human rights of the inmates have been stripped back to absolutely nothing. The conditions in the other divisions resemble a third world country type prison. Even convicted drug smuggler Schapelle Corby had a better prison cell in Bali than what Risdon offers. The cells are old, they have constant plumbing issues, along with electrical shortages, and the fact you sleep an arm's length away from where you go to the toilet. The kitchen area is something you would see in a city rocked by war. The walls are falling in, there is nowhere to prepare your meals, the electrical sockets are so old, they are always shorting out, and that means one power point is available for one microwave to be plugged into that has to heat up meals for 43 inmates. It's just absolutely shocking. In Ron Barwick, you are forced to work as being in minimum is a privilege. So there are a number of jobs you can do, from working in the tool area, the kitchen, or the veggie shed peeling carrots and spuds all day long. Either way, no matter the area you work, it's hard work, and for a payment of $52 per week, not an hour or a day, that's $52 per week. You get more in other jobs, such as working in the library or preparing the breakfast packs, or cleaning the office areas and packing the inmates' canteen buys. All those are great jobs to be doing. But the only issue there is, yep, you guessed it, it is only classified for people that are in protection or you're a pedophile. It absolutely shocked me just how much the pedophiles are protected and very much liked by staff in prison. It most certainly isn't the same on the mainland, and the roles are very much reversed in the way that the pedophiles get the horrible hard-working jobs and the inmates in mainstream who don't commit those deplorable acts are rewarded for their good behaviour and are given those jobs based on their efforts within the prison system. In Risdon, it seems you can commit those disgusting acts and be convicted of crimes that make you a pedophile, and then when they come to the prison, well, it's almost on par with them being treated like royalty. That is one broken justice system. I can tell you that the pedophiles get anything and everything they want. They have a better sleeping areas, newer cells, better yards, new equipment, better jobs, faster processing of request forms, internet access. Yes, that's right. The pedophiles who have been charged with convicted of sex crimes, most times storing catalogue of child pornography on their computer, which they have downloaded from the internet. Yes, they have access to the internet, which is meant to be monitored, but it isn't. Those pedophiles are allowed to use the internet so they can put little cartoon pictures and gather information and facts for their newsletter they publish every week called The Insider. What I find appalling is that magistrates and judges implement strict conditions when they sentence these offenders with no computer access for a period of time. But they come to prison, and for some reason the correctional services staff seem to overrule a judge's orders, and these pedophiles are able to use computers and to have the internet. Oh, how we live in a backwards time. You have a man like Greg Barnes, who is the supposed voice for inmates over in Risdon. But from many inmates I spoke with, they either don't get a reply from Mr. Barnes or he can't help them. But I guarantee you that if there is a TV news camera and a media pack outside, Greg Barnes will be the first to put his face in front of the lens and proudly go into bat for the inmates. Well, that's all well and good to do that, Mr. Barnes, but rather than hanging around doing interviews for 60 Minutes and other media platforms, why don't you get off your office chair, hop in the car, and go down and meet these inmates face to face and actually hear how they're feeling and what they're dealing with. That is what you should be doing, considering you paint yourself as an advocate for inmates. So my advice to you, Mr. Barnes, would be stop worrying about how you go about getting your face on TV and focus more on the well-being of the inmates. I've been labelled a con man, a washed-up journalist, a wannabe, and a maggot, and many other things I won't say on the air. Most of these comments have come from the mainstream media of Tasmania, such as the likes of Amber Wilson from the Mercury newspaper, as well as Tom Johnson, Garth Burley, and Ruby Kamane, all from 7 News Tasmania, and Jessica Moran and Damien McIntyre from ABC News Tasmania. These are the supposed journalists, the trusted news broadcasters, and it's sickening how these people act off camera. And when that little red light is switched on and it's time for them to front the camera and tell their communities the news, they simply put on a fake front. Fake was something you never got from me when I delivered my stories. I've been assaulted by Tasmania Police, which they failed to investigate. I've had several police raids conducted at my private residence and studio, and have been a victim of constant harassment by the Tasmania Police on regular basis because of some of the stories I've shared with viewers. I've been a victim of online bullying, I've received death threats, had media give out my personal information to people, which in turn then has seen me cop abuse while I've been out in public. I've been excluded from press conferences by police and other media and government officials. I had to have a restraining order placed against a former journalist who worked at the Examiner who turned media advisor for the government in order for her to stop harassing me and writing stupid, fake stories. So it's here I wish to express my sincere thanks to all those who have supported TasNews24 and Your Story. Without your support, we wouldn't have been able to bring you those stories. Let's take a look back at some of the stories we have featured from the last 3 years.
Across Tasmania, this is TasNews24 with Kane Dallow.
Hello and thanks for joining us. Well, it's now confirmed by the World Health Organization that the coronavirus is now becoming
Help me put my mind to rest. I'm losing my self-control. Everywhere I go, yeah, you're starting to trickle back in. It's a moment when I show up, God, I'm staying wild. I can feel your love pulling me up from the underground. Cross my heart, I won't do it again. We could be more than just part-time lovers. Dance for me, dance for me, dance for me, oh. I never seen anybody do the things you do before. They say, look what you made me do. I'm with somebody new. Ooh, baby, baby, I'm dancing with you. Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. I spent 10,000 hours, 10,000 more. Where's that higher love? I keep thinking of. It's never really over. I'm 100%, keep it moving. Oh no, there you go, making me a liar. Got me begging you for more. Oh no, there I go, starting up a fire. Don't call me.
You're a tough guy, like you really rough guy. Just can't get enough guy, just always a tough guy.
I'm a freaking monster, let me be a motivation.
Oh, 'cause I keep taking myself down deeper. I won't stop till I get where you are. I keep running when both my feet hurt. I won't stop till I get where you are.
Woke up late. Anything she needs, she can call me. Don't worry about it, that's my seat. No, that's all me. Just know if you cross her, then you cross me. You got it, girl, you got it. It's only you, and you know that it's real. So why would you fight and try to deny the way that you feel? This I don't care, but I got one thing right. All the bad things disappear. You're making me feel that maybe I am somebody. Know you're looking down on us. I'm missing you, bro. I hope you're proud of us. At least I know you made it home. And I know you're not alone. 'Cause now you're singing with the choir. Now you're dancing with the crew. You ain't doing this song.
Life is short, and this little one is so precious to me. I will admit the decision to bring my news career to an end wasn't easy, but it was the right thing for me to do. The fact I missed out on this little one's life of almost 10 months because I was sent to prison is something I will never forgive myself. But it's now time for me to step aside from the media world and focus on being a dad to this little one. So thank you for all your support and the stories. Your stories that I've been able to share with others, and I hope that during my time as a reporter, I was able to help those get justice and the communities become more aware of just how things can be kept silent. Don't remain silent. Stand up for your rights and give those people who need a voice a voice. So until next time, take care of yourself and others. Bye for now. What adventures are we going to go on now, Bubba? Hey? What adventures are we going to go on now? Mwah.